Good morning and welcome to It's How You'll Be Remembered. I am Julie Jones, the CEO of Today's Professionals. And with me today is Brian Galke, the CEO and founder of Subtle Skills. Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
I am so excited. I've been really excited about this because you and I, first of all, we met networking. I have to say that.
Correct. Yep.
And that is what's great about getting out and meeting people is that you really attract like-minded people. And so from the beginning, when I found out what you did, I was like, I need to know this man. And then the more that I get to know you, I feel like we're like cut from the same cloth when it comes to people skills and interactions. And I'm just so excited to have you here today. Tell us a little bit about Subtle Skills, the history behind it, and
Sure.
what you do, because I think it's so interesting.
So Subtle Skills was a company that I founded after what really helped me both personally and professionally. And it was all through fluke circumstances. And that was in 2011, a friend came in from out of town. She said, "Hey, let's go to dinner." She canceled on the dinner when I was already at the restaurant. And I said, "Well, why are you canceling?" She's like, "You need to come over here and meet this keynote speaker." And I'm like, "Why do I need to come meet him?" She goes, "Because he reads faces." And I go, "No, I'm not going because that's a bunch of BS." But she finally convinced me to go. But I
Yeah.
went with a plan, and my plan was to prove that this guy was a fraud because he had ruined my dinner plans. And back then, I wasn't quite as couth as I am now, so I went with an agenda. And I met this gentleman named Mac Fulfer. So we live in Dallas, Fort Worth. So I lived in Dallas. He lived in downtown Fort Worth. He was an attorney who learned face reading for jury consulting. But what he realized was it had so many more applications than just in the courtroom. And so back in the 80s, he wrote a book. This is one of my copies because I have multiple ones of it. So it's called Amazing Face Reading. Now the updated version is called The Power of Face Reading. You get it on Amazon. But I still kind of thought, okay, this guy's really nice. I don't know if I trust him. I'm going to prove he's a fraud. So he sat us down at dinner and he just started analyzing each of us at the table. And I'm trying to catch him. I'm like, okay, do their faces look the same? Are they different? Is he going to say the same thing? Because I'd read books on like mentalism, magic, where you say generic things that can apply to everyone, like, oh, you've had a hard day in life, or you've had someone whose name starts with and pick any letter. And what that does is that makes the audience search to provide the answer, and then they think you're brilliant. So I was waiting. I was trying to catch him in this. And it was so tactical, it was kind of terrifying. And then when he got to me, I'm like, this guy's been digging through my trash because what he was able to tell me about me solely based on my facial features blew me away. But I'm a skeptic by nature, but I'm a curious skeptic. So I bought his book, and I'd take the book and I'd go somewhere and I'd leave it out on a table. Like if I go to a coffee shop, I used to travel for work. So I'd lay it on the bar top. Human curiosity would kick in and go, "What's that book about?" And I go, "Well, I took this class, but I kind of think the guy's full of crap. Can I tell you what it says? And you tell me if it's accurate or not." Well, then people felt free to say yes or no because it wasn't me. They weren't going to hurt my feelings. I'd already set it up to say, if it's not true, I want to know. And what I found was, while it wasn't 100%, it was in the high 90s. And so I started digging in more and more. And then he then came out with flashcards, and I bought the flashcards and I'd take them with me and I'd do the same thing. And what I realized is I'm an introvert by nature, but when I'm focused on you, I'm not thinking about me. And it changed my life because instead of introverts live up here, overthinking everything. What did I say? Did I say it right? Do they like me? All these things. But when I'm focused on you, I get out of my own way. And that's where it really started to come in, is when you get out of the prison of your own mind and you get into the present moment, life changes.
Yep.
And I was an introvert on the help desk. Why? Because I always picked jobs growing up where people had to come to me. But I knew if I wanted to get more out of life, I needed to pick up books about other people. So what did we all start? How to Win Friends and Influence People. Zig Ziglar's based here in Dallas. So I had his tapes growing up as a kid.
I'm a Ziglar coach. Yes.
Are you really?
Yeah.
So is my old mentor, Mark Turner. Several of the people that are here, and that's the whole thing. So what I started to realize is us introverts, we're good at books and classes and seminars. So I would take my vacation time from work and go to self-improvement seminars.
Yep.
But what I found is the two things that really helped me the most were, first, learning body language, because there's so many books on body language. It's amazing. But then learning to decode facial features is what really changed things for me,
Mm-hmm.
because body language is good, but body language is reactive, meaning you have to move before I can figure out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But with face reading, you can go look up people on LinkedIn, social media, and you start trying to make the presentation about the person instead of pitching your product. And that's where things really changed.
Yes, because you can have a better conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I cannot wait to get into this. If you are joining us today live on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, be sure and let us know that you're here. Say hi. And if you have a question or comment, be sure and put it in the chat, because we want to know you're here. We want to get your questions answered as well. So welcome to everybody who is watching. Um, Brian, I want to talk too about, building rapport. You and I were talking just a little bit ago about building rapport. And, when people get into sales and customer service, like you said, we're always in our heads and we get really defensive.
Yes.
And so, but it's not necessarily conflict. And this is what I've learned in teaching etiquette all my years, is that conflict is not necessarily a bad thing. If somebody comes to you as a customer and complains, they're giving you an opportunity to make an improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in sales, it's not, get out of your head and detach emotionally, like you said, from me, make
Mm-hmm.
it about you, have the conversation. People then feel seen, valued, and heard. And as a teacher, the question was once asked to me, do students have to like you before they'll learn from you? The answer is, on some level, they have to feel that they trust you enough to learn from you and open up. You don't have to be the favorite, but
Right.
they have to be comfortable walking in your room. So it's all about relationships and rapport. And I love what you do, because we talked about the platinum rule.
Right. Hey, can I
And
explain why I shook my head a little bit? Because I
oh,
don't want to be disrespectful.
oh, yeah,
I think they have to respect you, and then they'll
yes,
be willing to learn from you. So I'm like, yes, it's ideal if they like you, but I do think they have to respect you. And that's why I shook my head. Like, there's a lot of people I
trust you.
respect, I may not like.
Yeah,
So I didn't, for anybody who's watching, that when I shook my head, that's why I was agreeing to
yeah,
disagree, is I think the respect has to be there, because I can
yes,
learn from anyone as long as I respect what they do. I don't always have to like them.
yeah. I think in my years of education, what I learned and coming out of that is that they have to be comfortable in your room. They have
Mm-hmm.
to know that you as a person see them as a person, and not just a test score,
Yes.
and not just, something. So there has to be a bonding relationship between students and teachers. And I also think, though, that carries into adulthood,
Mm-hmm.
because when I had a plumbing company, what I found was plumbing companies are on every corner. There's tons of them out there. But what makes them stick with you and refer you is when they feel seen, valued, and heard, and that
Mm-hmm.
you care, that we cared about them. Because then they would say, oh, you need to call them because they're really trustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really comes into the referrals. And so, you and I are probably saying the same thing,
Yeah.
when it comes to, do they have to like you? Don't have to be their favorite,
Right.
but on some level, there has to be I like you enough to step into the classroom and be open and
Yes.
vulnerable to say, I don't understand, or
Right.
to have a conversation with you. And that is what you do so well with subtle skills.
Mm-hmm. It it's being able to be in the room and be in the present moment
Hmm.
instead of pitching your product. So kind of what we are talking about before, and your product can be anything you want. It can be wanting to go on a date. If you come across way too needy, what happens is it's a repellent. If you've ever been in a sales situation where you walk in and you can tell the person only cares about making their commission instead of determining if this is the right product for me,
Hmm.
when it's a presentation versus a conversation, we check out, because
Yep.
we know that they're just reading a script. And when people start counting the money in their head instead of determining, is this right for the person, no matter what it is, it's a repellent, it's inauthentic, and we can see right through
And all,
that all
yeah.
the time.
I always say that there's a fine line between influence and manipulation. And influence is when you inspire someone to do something that's best for them. You
Right.
influence them. you inspire them, you guide them, lead them to do something that's best for them. Manipulation is when you inspire or lead them to do something that's best for you. And so
Mhm.
no one likes to feel that they're manipulated.
Correct.
Yes.
What drives me nuts, and I know you run across this because what we are talking about before we went live, is with the skills that we teach, it's learning how to speak the other person's language. And
Yeah.
people go, oh, that's manipulation. I go, okay, well, let me give you a different example. Is when I was younger and I used to travel to other countries, I used to say, well, they should speak English. And if they don't, I'll speak English louder.
Yeah.
That's me
Right.
pushing my agenda, right? But if I'm
Right.
going to another country and I learn basic phrases, please, thank you, good morning, good afternoon, that's
Yes.
attempting to speak their language as a sign of respect. And then they'll try to speak mine. That's
Yes.
really what people skills are, is
Yes.
not making it all about us, or not making it all about me, but making it about us.
Yes. That is so true. That is
Yeah.
so true. And I want to add on to that too. Hi, Ida. I'm so glad you're here. She says she's on LinkedIn. She says, hi,
Mhm.
Brian, and hi, Julie. So glad you're here. I wanted to also say about that. There's another phrase that I learned years ago when I go to a different country, and that is, how do you say? So say in their language,
Yeah.
how do you say? And then
Hmm.
you can say it in English, and then they know that you're trying
Yes.
to communicate with them in their language, in at their level, and they will help you. But they
Yes.
have to know you're trying.
Yes. And
So I love that.
that's the whole thing. It's a sign of respect.
It
You
is.
have to say you're as valuable as I am, not you should cater to me. And
That's right.
people just, for some reason, sales is a bad word. People are taught, well, that's being inauthentic. No, it's actually not being narcissistic,
Mhm.
because if you just think, well, they should speak the way I speak, that's you kind of being an accidental narcissist. And I know that's got a really bad word that's out there, but
Right.
that's unfortunately what we're doing, is we're thinking everyone should be like us, or everybody
Mhm.
has to be like me, instead of where do we meet in the middle.
Mhm.
And this day and age, it drives me nuts. People are just like, well, that's why I send everything in text message or email. And that's completely wrong. You need to have conversations first. And I know everybody's got a CYA and all this, but you have
Right.
a conversation that you follow up with a text or an email. You don't
Correct.
start with a text and an email, because if you do, guess what? I no longer need you, because I can have AI do that for me.
Right. That's right. And it's so funny that we were talking about the same survey that came out
Mhm.
from intelligent.com, that we were talking about our young people coming out of high school and college today, entering the workforce, are struggling, number one, to get jobs, and number two, to keep jobs. And
Yes.
I was at the University of North Texas this past weekend talking to my fraternity, sorority, Chi Omegas, because we had our Founders Day,
Mhm.
and we talked about this, about little things that help you get ahead. And it's things that you and I are talking about right now. And so I'm going to put this up right
Sure.
now, because you brought this up before. 53% of the people going in for job interviews can't even make eye contact with
Mhm.
people. And that is really how you build rapport, is you look at somebody.
Right.
Here.
It,
Yes.
there's a reason for this. So nobody feels attacked, right? If you fall into this where you're just graduating college and you're trying to apply for jobs, and people, it's not my fault. You're correct. The challenge is they grew up with this device, and what
That's
this device allows is
right.
perfection, meaning I can take the perfect picture. You and I took pictures, we sent it off, we got it back in a week or two, we hoped it looked good, we probably had red eyes, you know. Then they can craft the perfect text message. Now you can even change and edit it after you send it. You
Mhm.
always know who's calling. Everything is about perfection. Versus when we grew up, you had to walk to the store to ask for things, or ride your bike to the store. You had to ask people to get everything you wanted. When the phone rang, you had to pick it up and just say hello instead of knowing who's on the phone.
Right.
Nothing was available to be ordered online. Now I can order dinner, a date, a ride, everything, and never have to talk to a single person. And so
Right.
what they've done studies on is that younger generations right now, this having this same face-to-face communication gives them as much anxiety as our generation does for public speaking.
Right.
And it's because they can't perfect what they want to say. They have to respond on the fly, and they don't know how to do that.
Right.
That's what's
Right.
crazy about it.
And I think that's what you and I do in our coaching
Mhm.
practice is we really help people to build these skills.
Mhm.
Because you're right, we hide behind the phone or the computer as a way to just say we're here, we're perfecting, but we don't have to speak proper English. We can text
Right.
in shorts. We
Mhm.
we don't have to we can do a quick little video. But sometimes when we're doing job interviews, it says people won't even turn their camera on.
Right.
Yeah.
It'd be like if you and I just did the rest of it like this, it just wouldn't be as good of an interview, right? But
Right. It's not the same effect.
that's literally, look, we trust what we can see. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Which is, it basically, well, and especially for older people, we were always told face to face, shoulder to shoulder. Now, I will tell you, and you know this, but when it's one gentleman talking to another, you actually want to tilt shoulders because when we meet shoulders, we're squaring off.
That's right.
And so, there are little things that you have to learn once you get in the room. But the first part is you got to start on Zoom this day and age. You and I aren't in the same room. But if I did the conversation like this the rest of the time,
Which a lot of people do.
yes. Or, again, if I just blocked my camera, it doesn't have the effect as this right here. And so I will give away, this is a super inexpensive ninja trick for Zoom calls. You go, you get a Post-it note, you draw an arrow on it, and you stick it right above your camera. And
That's
so
right.
you just think, stare where the arrow is. Because the problem is we get on Zooms and everybody wants to look down to see what's going on with the Brady Bunch.
Right.
And we're not making eye contact. And so I'm
Right.
looking at your reactions. I think I'm doing good and realizing I'm not even looking at you.
Yeah.
You want to
You're
look where people are.
at the camera. That's
Yes.
right. And you don't want to move the screen to your other screen so that you're
Right.
looking and you're talking to people here because the
Yes.
camera is
Oh,
here.
that one drives me nuts. That one drives me absolutely. There was a guy, unfortunately, he's passed away. He was a brilliant marketer named Robbie Cornelius. But he had his other camera that he was talking to over here. And so he'd have his mic here and his camera's there. And he'd be like, yeah, uh-huh. And he was giving out great content, but I wanted to be like, we're over here.
I'm here. Hello. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's part of another thing about, what you do with subtle skills, what I do is it's really
Mhm.
about making connections with people.
Yes.
People really want to feel seen, valued, and heard.
Mhm.
And that's when you can't make connections by looking at people, by having a conversation in full sentences, using proper grammar and all of that, it's really tough for people to feel like they're comfortable enough to even buy from you. Right.
Yes.
Or go on a date with you,
Yes.
or marry you. I mean, it's just, we all want to be connected. And that's really, I think, at the heart of the human race is we all want to be connected.
100%. There's 4 basic human needs. Everybody's familiar with what's his, I just drew a blank. Milo's hierarchy.
Mhm.
I forget the name, but anyway, yes.
Mhm.
Yes. But what it really comes down to is there's 4 basic human needs: physical safety, emotional safety. People want to feel seen and people want to feel heard. And those create connection with people. And
Mhm.
we are more disconnected than we have ever been
Right.
because we don't call up friends anymore. We check up on them online. Like it literally, and what do people post online? What they're doing, living their best life. So then there's studies up to like 71% of kids that are younger feel depressed because they're not talking to their friends to find out what's really going on.
Right.
They just see the highlights and think, well, my life isn't that cool. And so then it becomes, well, I'll withdraw. And what does that do? Isolation is a punishment. If there's nothing we learned from a few years ago, it's when we're forced to stay home, things change. It's a form of punishment. The worst offenders in the world get solitary confinement
Right.
as a punishment. But kids are doing this more and more, and adults are doing it too, because it's easier, once again, to check on people because I don't have to make a phone call. I don't have to text anybody. I'll just go check 12 people's social media pages, and we
Mhm.
think we're connecting with them, but we're not. We're checking on them, but that's not where people are. That's the
Mhm.
highlight reel that people are sharing.
Yeah, you're right. And it's all about that perfection. It's all
Mhm.
about perfection. We've got some people in the comments. Jacqueline January says, hello. Hi, Jack. How are you? Thanks for joining us. It's good to see you. And then we have Ida comes in and she was laughing. I'm not sure exactly what she was laughing at, but we said something that she was,
There's no telling.
you're
Before I
right.
forget, so if anybody's wondering what I'm drinking, I got one of those new Echo hydrogen water things. I went to an event
Oh,
this weekend, CryoCon, and they were selling them. And I used to have the little small one. I thought, I don't want people to think I'm drinking vodka or any kind of liquor. So no, it's hydrogen water. It's my new
well,
toy.
we hear a lot about that. Gary Brecka talks a lot about hydrogen water.
That's who was here this past weekend. He
Was
was,
he?
yeah, he was here. So CryoCon was Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and that's why I went Thursday. He closed it out, so I got a picture with him, and I've met him at several speaking events before. So I caught up with him and Sage, and he was talking about it. And so Echo was actually one of the vendors with the booth there, and I'm like, time to upgrade my water bottle. So yeah, that's
That's right.
the new one. This one I like better because it can hold more liquid. Because the other one, I felt like I was drinking espresso of water because like it would hold this much water, and then you'd
Right,
have to go fill it back up again. This is a good full size one, so it's my new
right.
toy.
So
Yeah.
you can get hydrated that
Yes.
way.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry, I got distracted.
I'm so jealous that you got to meet Gary Brecka. That's great. Where was
Yeah.
the conference?
It was at the Renaissance in Addison.
Okay.
Yeah, it was literally. I'll show you a picture real fast.
Yeah, pull it
So
up. We want to see that.
yeah, there's Gary and I.
Oh
We're
man,
all blurred out, but yeah,
you rock stars.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I just love
congratulations.
hearing him speak. Everything that he's got going on, and I've been following him the last few years, ever since he kind of hit the scene, and
Mhm.
have seen him speak at several events. And actually, I was taking the wrong kind of B12, and I was doing injections probably 4 years ago. And the easy, this is going to sound so counterintuitive, and this will make people who are watching laugh. When you're looking at B12, you want to think, I want to be on meth. And that's because there's a psilocybin type that's bad, and then the meth one is the good one. So every time I look on the back of an energy drink, anything else, I look to see what type of B12 it has. But what you want to just plant in your head is, I want to be on meth because that's a good B12. But
Oh,
Gary
okay.
showed me Gary showed me a study of the one that I was injecting and what it's made of, and he's like, "You really want that in your body?" It's like, no.
No.
And that's what I like, is he didn't just pull up something, a quote on his head. He's like, let me show you something like computer. He walked right to it, found the article, and he's like, read this. I was like, oh,
Wow.
okay. Yes. And
Wow.
that's what builds credibility. Back to what we're talking about, is showing people and letting them make the decision instead of just telling people what they
Mhm.
need to do.
Right.
So
And that's what I do love about him
mhm.
is, the study behind what he does. I mean, he's very credible. And I actually have studies and I always pull up studies as well.
Mhm.
Back to what we were talking about people skills is there's research out there that shows that 85% of a person's success in life comes from their ability to connect with people.
Yes.
And so, and this is we're seeing a shift in schools now, because when I first became an etiquette consultant and left education, they did not believe me when I said this to them. They were like, "Oh, we can get a basketball coach to do that.
Uh-huh.
We don't need a certified person in people skills to do that." But really, these skills need to be intentionally taught because there's so many of us who are in our heads. And I think now, coming out of what we've come out of and seeing that we're all behind a computer and a phone all the time, we don't have people skills anymore.
Correct.
And so we do have to teach this intentionally. And there are universities who are bringing this in as classes. I'm talking to a university right now about doing this. There's
Mhm.
a big university, University of Texas, actually at Austin, has a degree plan in this.
Really?
Yeah. I did a class for a PR firm here, and one of the ladies came up to me and said, "This is exactly what I got when I got my degree, and I got it
Mhm.
in leadership and people skills." And she said, "You everything you just said, I learned in my degree." And I was like, "Awesome! Who do I need to talk to there to say congratulations on doing
Right.
this?"
Hey,
But we're coming around.
we are. And listen, it's more important than it ever was. I just did a post about this last week. All the advice that I got from my parents, that they got from their parents, was good for 2 generations ago, but it's not accurate for today. So
Right.
things like work hard and keep your head down. Don't be a braggart. Just work hard and you'll be recognized. That is not the case anymore, because before it was a lot of, you had to, on the job experience, you had to show that you had work ethic, and then people promoted you. That's not the way the world works anymore, because knowledge is no longer power. Knowledge is accessible by everyone via AI. So I feel sorry for kids who are graduating right now, because what they were sold when they started their degree 4 years ago or 3 years ago, however quick they go through it, that's
Right.
not the job market today. Like, I
Right.
have 2 sisters who are graphic artists. Thank goodness that they are established in their career and they have built those personal relationships, because guess what? ChatGPT can create your logos for you now in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So even if you're doing something that at one time paid well, most professions are going to go lower in salary because
Mhm.
you no longer have limited knowledge. So even
Right.
take lawyers, right? Lawyers are now, it used to be, okay, I don't know, I'm just going to go to a lawyer and have them draft up everything. Now people are going to Chat GPT, drawing up documents they want, and they're just having lawyers edit it for specifics. And that cuts down on the billable hours that an attorney can charge. So
Right.
you can go through any profession, and what's going to make you stand out are your relationships and your ability to build relationships with people.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're exactly right. If you want to be liked, you have to be likable. If you want to
Yes.
be seen and heard, you have to know how to get noticed.
Yes.
There's still a lot to don't brag, but
Mm-hmm.
there's also a lot for standing up for yourself, having tough conversations.
Right.
These are all skills that we don't have anymore, and it's really what's going to set us apart. Um, and I think our school systems are turning around and understanding that we have to teach these skills now. But when I started back in 2011, I actually got laughed at a little bit for doing this. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, companies are hiring etiquette consultants for a reason, and
Yeah.
that's the research.
Oh,
I think that. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh, no, I was going to agree with you. I mean, when I would tell people I'm taking off to go study body language, all this, people are like, you'll never put that stuff to use. That stuff doesn't matter. I just show up and I work hard. Look who's being kept. It's the people who build relationships with others within the organization.
That's
Because
right.
I'm sorry, but the outdated advice that I got, what that was, go to school, go work for a big company. Well, at a big company, you know what you are? You're a spreadsheet number.
A number. Hmm.
Yes. And sometimes, if you look at last year, was 2024 was the great unbossing. And that was how many mid-level managers, which was supposed to be the safe job, right, got let go by corporations because people at the very top needed to keep that C-suite, because you got stockholders, boards, and all that kind of stuff. And so they normally people would trim out the workers, but the problem is the middle level is where the money was. So they
Right.
got rid of a lot of people who worked their way into mid-level management that
Hmm.
weren't well known, because they need to keep the workers doing it, and they need to keep the people operating at the top.
Right.
And if you didn't have relationships and you're the mid-level manager, they just look and they see heavy salary, heavy vacation time. It's a good way for us to save money.
That's right. That's exactly right. And those are the people looking for jobs right now.
Hmm.
Yes, and I think too, we talk a lot about emotional intelligence,
Hmm.
and part of the emotional intelligence is learning to control your own emotions and learning who you are, which is what you do.
Yes.
But it also is about reading the room, looking
Hmm.
at the person who's in front of you, and being able to interpret what they're thinking or what they're feeling at the time. And we talked about this. I misspelled empathy, didn't I? Let me
Yeah, I
take
didn't
that.
want to say anything. Well, that's
Yeah,
why when I
I've
jumped
been
in
really
earlier, I thought,
fast.
well, take it down and fix it. But
Empathy, empathy. So yeah, so
yeah.
that's so funny. I will fix it. But we want to, managers need to be able to have empathy. Look at this. My mother, who was an English teacher, would have just rolled over in her grave. Um, but we want to learn how to understand the people that are with us. And I think that learning the people skills, talking about emotional intelligence, these skills really can be learned.
Hmm. Well, I'm going to go with the playoff of the accidental mistyping. Life is empty if there's no empathy.
Oh, that's
Because yeah. So I think that's what you were really going for, is if you can't be empathetic to other people,
right.
life is very empty, because you're not trying to put yourself in their shoes. and you just start putting judgment of people instead of learning to understand people. Now, don't get me wrong. There are
That's right.
times when you have to give tough love. I just recently went through this with a friend of mine. Like, I was trying to be super nice and be helpful and everything. And then I just had to be brutal one day and just lay it out there. I'm like, these are the facts of what's going to happen. But
Mhm.
I first tried to go the empathy route, and that didn't work. And so I don't want everybody to think that this is all woo woo and everything's always great. There is a time for tough love, and there's a time for love when you're
Right.
helping people. And it's
Right.
learning to balance those skills, because again, you have to learn to read the room. You can be trying the loving approach and it's not sinking in. And then you have to
Mhm.
flip it and go, okay, it's going to be time to hurt some feelings. But sometimes hurt feelings is what helps.
Right.
You talked about something earlier. Uh, when you said, well, not everybody's going to like you and everything else, I say haters are helpers. And what I mean by that is, when you got questioned early on, yes, it created some doubts in you, but you got to learn to reframe your message. So I love when somebody attacks or questions something. I used to get offended and I'll delete those comments. I won't do it. Now I look at it as, okay, well, this is an opportunity for me to explain it in a different way. So
Yes.
haters are helpers to a degree, because sometimes we think we're making sense, but if they can't understand it, you have to learn to reframe it a different way.
Right.
So,
You're exactly right. And I want to touch on the tough love,
mhm,
because everybody receives feedback differently.
right.
Some people need the gentle approach because they're very self-aware, and they will, because they want to please, they'll take the feedback, and they'll work with it.
Yeah.
Other people want to be defensive and want to argue. And so you have to be a little bit tougher, but you don't ever have to be mean. You
Right.
don't ever have to say something that demeans somebody, because you can give tough feedback in a loving way and say, "Look, this is coming from my heart because I want to help you be better. And you're not hearing what I'm saying to you. So let me just be blunt. Let me speak directly to you."
Right.
Because I used to fear giving that kind of constructive feedback,
Hmm.
and I had to learn, "Look, I'm doing this because I care about you.
Correct.
I'm doing this because I want you to be successful, and I want you to see a different view, a different perspective." And so that's an art form. It's
Hmm.
part of what you and I both do, and that is teaching people how to have those conversations and knowing when to be tougher, when to be a little bit subtle. Because
Yeah.
I have 2 children, and they are night and
Yeah.
day, but I could not discipline my children the same way.
Correct. Well, here's
There's
the,
just no way.
yeah, what I learned after having a kid was, you attack the action, not the person. And
Correct.
so, when you have kids, if they do something wrong, you don't say, "You're a bad girl." You'd say,
Yes.
"That's not appropriate thing." And that's a real change. I mean, growing up, you were called a good kid or a bad kid. And what I think they've realized
Yeah,
over time is, attack the action, not the person. Now you
that's
can
right.
you can say things like, "When are you going to learn?" But you don't name call a person.
That's right.
You can
To me,
say, "Look, this action is ridiculous." That's attacking what they did, not who they are. And
right.
that's where people get confused, is sometimes we do dumb things or stupid things and we need to be called out. But are they
Mhm.
calling out our action, or are they calling us out as a person? If we can learn to separate those things out,
Right.
criticism doesn't sting as much either.
That's right. That's right. Because people will receive it, but you have to speak their language. You have to speak to them in the way that they need to hear it so that they can
Yes.
receive it.
Yep.
And again, that's not manipulation. That is
Correct.
influence, right?
Yes.
Oh my
It's
god.
evaluating the rooms. It's going into it. So you and I were talking before. The saddest thing is that we think if we're trying to learn to build rapport with others, people automatically assume it's manipulation, and
Right.
it's not. It's signs of respect, because the opposite of that is expecting you to be just like me isn't valuing who you are.
That's correct.
And you and I talked about before this. So I'll talk about the first rule. You can talk about the second one. And that is, we were raised with the golden rule: treat people the way that we want to be treated. And it's a
Mhm.
nice first step, but
Mhm.
what's the better rule?
Yeah, the platinum rule.
Mhm.
And I think they work together, because the platinum rule says treat someone the way that they would like to be treated.
Right.
But we're talking, the golden rule, I think, is speaks to ethics.
Hmm.
Do the right thing, have integrity. If you don't want somebody to steal from you, don't steal from them. If and I used to use that in my classroom all the time. Don't hit your friend. Well,
Yeah.
why not? Well, do you want your friend to hit you? I mean, that's all the golden rule. The platinum rule really comes in the where we're talking about messages,
Yeah.
sending and receiving messages to
Hmm.
each other. And it gets into speaking their language, and the language that they need to hear. Do you need to have a softer approach, or does somebody need to have a more direct approach? Because there are people who don't get the soft approach. They don't comprehend it. But if you're more direct and you speak directly, then they get it.
Hmm.
But and the vice versa of that, if somebody um, is very sensitive and tenderhearted, and you come at them very directly, then they think you're being a jerk,
Yeah.
because that's not the way that they need to hear it. So, yeah.
Went through one of those this past weekend. There was a friend that takes things a little bit tough, but I had to get tough, but so there are times that, you have to do what you have to do. One of the things for people who don't know what you and I do, is that's the entire thing that we teach people, is how to look at other people and start figuring out, how do I speak their language? How do I work with them? So we
Mhm.
mentioned earlier, I was trained by the attorney Mac. So attorneys are taught for jury consulting how to analyze facial features.
Yeah.
And it's so that you can understand who's auditory, who's visual, how do they take in and process information. And that's what really changed everything for me, is because I could go into a room, and I used to sell to government contracts. And so we'd have to answer these like huge 200-page requests for proposals, but we didn't always know who'd be on the evaluation committee. Now, if I knew or had a strong feeling who'd be, I could look them up on LinkedIn ahead of time and start thinking, well, how would this person take in and process information? But
Mhm.
if I went in, it was a blind evaluation committee. While I was setting up, I was looking at their faces and figuring out, okay, this person likes facts, figures, and data. This person wants to know what's their angle. This person cares about the people around them. And you learn to make eye contact with those people when you're hitting those various parts, to let
Right.
them know, hey, this part is for you. And it's
Yes.
a simple little things like that that can change things. It's gonna be a little bit harder to see on here, but if you're talking to someone and their lower eyelid is rounded, our eyes are like camera lenses. So if their lower lid is rounded, they're open for hearing what you're talking about. But if you're talking to them and all of a sudden you see it go straight, you just flatlined. Something you said or did has them wanting to close you out. But we're taught, don't cross our arms, don't lean away. But we can't control this little lower lid. The minute that happens, that somebody's trying to close you out of the deal. Now, if you're paying enough attention and you see that, you can go, it just seems like something that we just talked about isn't sitting right with you. Do you want to dive in a little bit deeper? And when you do that, you're able to address the issue or concern at the moment. Because
Mhm.
sometimes once people hit that flat line, if you
Mhm.
don't get a second chance and they leave the room, you're not getting back in there. So
Wow.
our
Yeah.
our bodies, our faces, everything are biofeedback machines. So for example, I have this little crease in my ear. Those are for people who have to keep an eye on their cardiovascular health. But there's 43 muscles in the face. The mind creates movement, movement creates muscle, and our faces are constantly changing. So we have a thought, we make a face, and then that will alter the muscle structure over time.
Yep.
And that's why I can, in my presentations, I show a picture of me at 18 versus 38 and how much my face has changed over time.
Mhm.
Sometimes if it's a really traumatic event, it can happen very quickly. But most things, it's just like putting on or taking off weight. We don't realize the changes because we see ourselves every day.
That's
But
right.
if you've ever run into a friend who was in a bad relationship or a job they hated, and we see them, they look different, we'll be like, you look like a whole new person, because they do. They went from frowning all the time, which creates a downturned mouth, to
Mhm.
smiling, and then their mouth can turn up. If they
Yeah.
were in a relationship or a work environment where they weren't allowed to have a voice, every time they go to talk, they do in body language what's known as lip suppression. And that will flatten the upper lip over time. Well, when they leave that position or that relationship and they start talking more, that lip can get larger from
Wow.
use. And
Without
so then,
injections.
without injections, yes. Now, what's really interesting, go to any former communist country where that people weren't allowed to have a voice, like literally you had an opinion, you could be shot and killed, and they have very flat upper lips. But the
Wow.
next generations don't, because they grew up able to express their feelings and to move those muscles more.
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
So interesting. That is so cool. I mean, I could talk to you all day long. It's just
Well, that's why
every
we're
time
going
we
to
get
work together.
together, I'm like, let's just keep talking.
Exactly. Well,
Right.
it's the same goal of wanting to help people with what we weren't helped with. So it's like everything else in life. You become what you needed as a kid. the reason I teach this changed my life. I'm a product of the product. It's not
Yeah.
even my book. I mean, I'm writing a book. It's
Mhm.
in my mentor's hands, but I still say, get this book as well, because this is like the dictionary that you can
Yeah.
look up anything at any time.
Yes.
People confuse that of like, oh, this guy came up, and no, this has been around since the Greeks. It was part of the academic system until Henry VIII said, I don't
Mhm.
like the idea that beggars and vagabonds can use this against their fellow man. And he had it yanked out.
Yeah.
But before that, it was in English universities. So you look at, no matter which side you're on, politicians don't always have the best interests at hand. And he was one who just said, nope, I don't like this skill, and got rid of it. But
Yep.
think about what we've lost. We've lost the ability to connect with people
Mhm.
because of one person's decision. And then we're connected to the world, but we're so digitally disconnected from each other. It's unreal.
I know. I love this because you were talking about, the eyes and when people close off.
Hmm.
There's the forehead up here and the wrinkles here,
Hmm.
the burrowed forehead
Yep.
shows that people really are thinking a lot, and that
Yes.
they need the data. They need
Hmm.
more facts or more information because they're processing the facts. It's just so interesting because the process communication model and what you do they're so in line
Yeah.
together in what we do. It's so cool.
So it's funny. I'm looking for a line. I'm going to show you. I'm looking for something in the book real fast, because what you're talking about is exactly what I was taught too. So in what I was taught, right? So let's see if we can see it there in the book. Yeah. So those same lines you're talking about are
Yep.
called mental development lines, or Einstein lines. So it's the
Yes.
exact same thing. Is how do they get there? That's deep, intense study by people
Mhm.
who
Mhm.
need to dive in deep. And what's really interesting is if they have one solid one across their forehead,
Yes.
that is, I usually see that on doctors, attorneys, engineers, deep, intense, Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours of study type
Yep.
thing. And that's
Yep.
what I mean. The mind creates movement, movement
Yep.
creates muscle. And so you can look, depending on when people squint, how many lines they have tell you, are they a
Yes.
perfectionist? Are they
Yes.
just very focused? Our
Yep.
faces literally tell other people how to talk to us.
Yes.
It's
They
just
do.
we weren't trained on that. Now, I will say this: we were unofficially trained. And how? Because all the required reading we had in school, well, how did we understand the characters in the book? Authors took courses in what's known as physiognomy, aka face reading, for character development and expansion. So you can go and Google physiognomy, Edgar Allan Poe, Dickinson. They all took courses, because how do you think all these characters are looking and sounding the same? Like, we picture them in our head. And that's why sometimes who we read, if the person who made the movie changes it, we don't like the movie,
That's right.
because we've been taught how characters are and who people are through their actions and through their facial
Mhm.
features. Because there wasn't Lamborghinis and red bottom shoes and Rolex watches. It was very basic. With men wore suits, women wore dresses.
That's right.
But that's how they expanded characters. How else have we been taught? Fairy tales. Why can you go anywhere in the world? The witch looks the same, the devil looks the same, a hero looks the same. All these things has been
Yes.
reinforced to us. We just haven't been formally taught
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. The handsome prince always looks the same, doesn't he?
Exactly. Strong jaw, strong chin, you
Yes.
name it.
That's,
All
fit,
Yeah.
all
So
those things.
yeah, so that's we learned to understand. That's why I keep it on here. Let me find one of the people say, "Oh, well, your face can't change." I'm like, okay, well, does anybody remember this little device? It was the Jawzerciser, and it literally was, you would do exercises and it would give you a stronger jaw. So it's not our skull. That's phrenology, and that was, if you had bump here, you're going to be a criminal. Let's go ahead and throw you in jail. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about
Right.
the muscles that are
Yes.
constantly moving, just like the muscles on our body.
Yep. Yes.
And
That
they,
is so funny.
yeah,
So Jack wanted to say, hey, haters are helpers. She's going to remember that one because
it's
we all
true.
we
Yeah.
all hate that negative feedback.
Yeah, I used to go in and delete comments, and what's funny is my Instagram was at over 200,000, then it's dropped to like 199. But it's because I started responding. Now, you don't want to be mean. I did a test of this over the holidays. So in November, I thought, you know what? If somebody's gonna be an a-hole to me, I'm gonna be one right back. And what
Right.
it looked like was me having a larger following, attacking the little guy, and I lost followers, even though the people that did it were accounts that had 0 posts, no profile picture. It was accounts made strictly to troll people.
Hmm.
But it was people come up like, dude, why are you responding this way? And I'm like, I was just doing a test, and I only did it on one post. And ultimately, I deleted that post because I started losing. That post would keep going viral because I was arguing back and forth. And I
Right.
did it because we'll talk about algorithms. Nobody really knows the algorithm, but here's some theories. When
Yes.
you do a post, it's like worth 1 point. If somebody likes it, it's worth 2 points. If somebody comments on it or if somebody shares it, it's like worth 3 points. But if somebody comments, that's like 5 points. And then if you respond to their comment, that's like getting 10 points because they wanted you to interact with people.
Right.
And so I started doing that. And that's what took me from, I had like 8,000 followers to 100,000 followers pretty quickly, was responding to people on Instagram.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it all has to do again with human interaction.
Yes.
You know, it's and if you hire a bot to go in and do it, now the algorithms can pick that up.
Yes.
Or they're getting better at it. I don't know that they have it perfected, but they are picking that up for the bots to go in and do that.
Yeah. Well, because they keystrokes are tracked to a degree, not exactly, but it's looking at, are you copying and pasting, or are you taking time to develop what you're responding with?
Mhm.
And that's an interesting one too. So there's all kinds of theories on social media. Like, I'm kind of lazy. I take a video, I put it in my comments in Apple Notes, I go to AI and say, hey, make this look sexier. And then I go and I paste it Instagram first. Instagram pushes to Facebook. Then I
Mhm.
go to LinkedIn, or let me think, TikTok, then Instagram, then LinkedIn, then YouTube. And I paste it in. But what I noticed is when I used to go and actually type the comments myself, I
Yeah.
got pushed more because they saw me as not just popping in, posting, and getting out, but spending time on the platform. So you have to play with all of them differently and see what hits, because LinkedIn has never been a big video page. So they
Mhm.
always wanted posts, but they're starting to promote videos more.
They are.
But
Yeah.
you can still look at more engagement still goes to posts with the write up than videos do for the most part.
Yeah, they like the LinkedIn letters and articles and things,
Yes.
whereas Instagram loves the pictures and videos. And videos are just coming, you know, really, videos are now the new SEO.
Yes.
Because, you know, what when you search something, your YouTube videos come up first and
Hmm.
rather than your website.
Right.
So
Well, and that's because Google owns YouTube.
that's right.
So, you look at them as a marketing engine. The other reason we like video is because we feel like we get a sense of being with the person.
Mhm.
And that goes back to, we're all trying to figure out who everyone is. Well, if there's a post and it's a perfect picture of you, that doesn't tell me who you are.
Mhm.
And I'll give a very simple analogy that happened to me personally was, I'm a big fan of Never Split the Difference, the book that I have over here. And Chris Voss, well, I listened to it on Audible first. And then I
Mhm.
found out he was going to be in Texas. And in Audible, it's read by a very eloquent speaker who talks throughout the book. And then I went and met him in real life. And I was like, whoa, it was jarring to me because his voice was so different from who I thought he was based on the Audible book. So if you
Yeah.
look, even most authors are actually recording their voices, their books in their own voice for consistency and authenticity now.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm a fan of videos. Plus, to a
Yeah.
degree, I'm lazy because I can go give a 60-minute talk. They send me a copy of it afterwards. I throw it in Opus Clips, and I have 40 new videos that I can create out of that one talk. So,
Exactly. Yeah. And that makes it a lot easier because, you know, again, the video editors, you know, are not as in demand because we can do our own, you know, clips
mhm,
and things
exactly.
from that as well. You know, it is so interesting. You and I are just aligned so closely when it comes to people skills and really what determines somebody's success and how well they connect with others. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter how far we go with technology. It's really, you know, how you show up and how you connect that matters. And I cannot thank you enough for coming here today, for spending so much time and sharing your wisdom and knowledge with
Glad to
us.
be here.
This has been so fun.
We'll have to do a part two.
I think so. And I think you and I need to do a master class um, together so that we can, you know, people can chime in and really see what we do and just give some tips away that would help people really connect in this artificial world that we've got.
Agreed. I think degrees are done. I think people, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I still think education matters.
Yeah.
But like I said, everyone has access to AI now, which can do
Mhm.
a majority of the work. People skills will be the future. If you're not working on your people skills, you're going to get left behind.
You really are. Because that all the research shows that.
Yeah.
And it is the determiner. If you want to be liked, be likable.
Hmm.
It's the way it goes. So one more comment I want to pull up here. Jack says, thank you both. We're so glad that you joined us, Jack. Thanks so much. I've known her for years. We go way back.
Awesome.
So thank you, Brian.
Mhm.
I always ask, because the name of the show is It's How You'll Be Remembered.
Right.
Because when I taught only business etiquette, I will always say it's not just etiquette, it's how you'll be remembered.
Mhm.
How will you be remembered?
Well, that's a few trick questions. I don't like, let's go morbid for a minute. I don't want a funeral. I want a party. I want a party where people come back and talk about the good
Celebrate.
stuff. Look,
Let's
I don't care what kind of box you put me in. I'm already done.
yeah,
So I want a, celebration of life type thing.
yeah,
I have a daughter, so I hope I'm remembered as a good father, as a
yeah.
friend, and as making an impact on people. Because look, I'm an introvert by nature. I still go to some events and I'll hide in the corner until I get comfortable. But so
Mhm.
I'm an ambivert, but I got to warm up to it.
Yeah.
And I hope to make a difference in people's lives, like Mac did for me, where he changed my life for the better because he
Mhm.
was willing to share information and knowledge. Now you still have to go and work with it and practice with it and run with it.
Right.
But I hope that's what it does, is it helps people create that connection that we're losing because of these devices here.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you definitely will be remembered as somebody who impacted the world. And I know you, and you are a great father.
I
So
appreciate that.
I think that is something that you will be remembered for. Thank you so much
Of
for
course.
joining us today. We will do it again for sure. We've got other things
Absolutely.
ahead.
Awesome.
All right, we'll see you soon. Thanks, Brian.